Everyone needs to know she's been stealing from this family every single month, skimming money like a common thief. My husband stood at the head of the Thanksgiving table, pointing his finger straight at me. 50 relatives went silent. Forks froze midair. Every single pair of eyes in that room locked on me. He wanted to destroy me in front of everyone. He had no idea I'd been waiting for exactly this moment. My name is Bridget. I'm 34 years old. I work as a freelance bookkeeper for small businesses. Numbers are my language. Details are my specialty. I notice things other people miss, and I never forget a single figure that passes through my hands. 7 years ago, I married Dale Harmon. He came from a big, loud family that ran a regional catering company together. The Harmons were tight-knit, proud of their name, and protective of their money. Dale was the favorite, the one they always praised, the son who could do no wrong. When I married him, I thought I was joining a family. Instead, I became their unpaid employee. Dale's parents asked me to handle the catering company's books as a favor that turned into 20 hours of free work every single week on top of my own paying clients. I did it because I wanted them to accept me. I wanted to belong. But no matter how many hours I gave, no matter how perfectly I balanced their accounts, I was always the outsider. The woman who married into the family, but never truly became part of it. I wasn't flashy. I didn't come from money or a big family name, but I had something none of them expected. I had every single receipt, every transfer, every lie they ever told, organized in a folder they didn't know existed. If you've ever done the invisible work that holds everything together and nobody thanked you for it, hit that subscribe button right now. I want to know I'm not the only one. Drop your story in the comments because I'm reading every single one. Let's go. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of that Thanksgiving night. The Harmon family's annual dinner was always a big production. 50 relatives packed into Dale's parents' farmhouse, tables stretching from the dining room into the living room. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon candles filled every corner of that old house. This was their biggest tradition. Everyone attended, no exceptions. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Dale's mother, Regina, noticed that $14,000 was missing from the catering company's operating account. She didn't call an accountant. She didn't ask me to look into it. She called Dale. And Dale didn't come to me either. He didn't ask me a single question. He went straight to his mother and his sisters, and together, behind closed doors, they decided I was the thief. Because I was the bookkeeper. Because I was the outsider. Because I was the easiest person to blame. So Dale planned his big moment. He rehearsed it. He waited until after the prayer, right before the meal, was served when every single relative was seated and paying attention. Then he stood up and pointed at me. I trusted you with my family's livelihood, and you stole from us. $14,000. You think I wouldn't find out? The words hit me like a slap across the face. Not because they were true, because they were calculated. Regina backed him up instantly. We should have never let an outsider handle the money. I told you, Dale. I told you from the beginning. Then Dale's sister, Noelle, leaned in with her own contribution. She probably sent it to her own family. They've always been looking for a handout. I sat there frozen. I could feel the heat of 50 stares burning into my skin. Whispers crawled across the table like insects. A few relatives shook their heads. Then Dale slid a printed bank statement across the table toward me. I've already talked to a lawyer. You can either pay it back or we handle this legally. Your choice. Right here, right now. I looked down at that paper, and my heart didn't sink. It actually steadied, because I recognized immediately that the statement had been altered. Certain transactions were missing. Lines had been removed. Someone had doctored this document. I looked up at Dale, then at Regina, and in that moment, I understood everything. They knew exactly where that $14,000 went. This wasn't confusion. This was a setup. I reached slowly into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. You want to talk about money in front of everyone, Dale? Then let's really talk about money. The room went dead silent. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand what the last 7 years of my life in this family actually looked like. Because Thanksgiving wasn't the first time they made me feel like nothing. It was just the last time I was going to allow it. From the very beginning, I was shut out of every important decision about the business I spent 20 hours a week maintaining. They held family meetings in the dining room on Sunday afternoons. I would hear them talking through the walls, discussions about expanding to new venues, changing pricing, making large equipment purchases. I tracked every dollar that moved through their accounts, but I was never invited to sit at the table where those dollars were being discussed. One time, about 3 years into my marriage, I asked Dale if I could attend the next meeting. He barely looked up from his phone. You just do the numbers, Bridget. You don't need to be in the room. I remember standing in the kitchen after he said that, holding a coffee mug so tight my knuckles turned white. A few weeks later, I overheard Regina talking to one of her sisters-in-law at a birthday party. She didn't know I was around the corner. She's useful, but she's not family. You know what I mean? Useful. That word stayed with me like a bruise that never healed. Then there was the barbecue. 6 months before Thanksgiving, the Harmons threw their annual reunion, picnic tables, grilled ribs, kids running through sprinklers. It should have been a nice day. We were sitting around the main table when Noelle decided to make one of her jokes. She looked right at me with that smirk she always wore, and she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Come on, Bridget. We all know why you married into this family. It wasn't for Dale's looks." The whole table erupted in laughter. I looked at Dale. He was laughing too. Not a lot, just enough. He didn't say a word in my defense, not one single word. That night, when I told him it hurt, he rolled his eyes. "You're too sensitive, Bridget. It was a joke. Learn to take one." I stopped talking after that, not because I had nothing to say, because I started paying closer attention, and that's when I found it. 3 months before Thanksgiving, while reconciling the quarterly accounts, I noticed an irregular transfer. $14,000 moved from the catering company's operating account into a personal checking account. I traced the account. It belonged to Regina. She had used the money to pay a contractor for renovations on a rental property she owned privately on Birch Street. It wasn't a business expense. There was no documentation, no loan agreement, no approval from any other family member involved in the company. I brought it to Dale carefully. I showed him the numbers. I asked him to explain it. He didn't even look at the paper. Mom said it's fine. Don't make problems where there aren't any. That was the moment everything became clear. I was the bookkeeper, the outsider, the one with no power and no voice. If anything ever went wrong with the money, I would be the scapegoat. It wasn't a question of if. It was a question of when. So I stopped talking. But I didn't stop working. I started making copies of everything, bank statements, transfer records, emails. I documented every single hour of unpaid work I had given to the family business over 7 years. I was quiet. I was invisible. And they mistook that for weakness. They thought my silence meant I had given up. But I wasn't quiet because I was afraid. I was quiet because I was building something they couldn't argue with. What they didn't know was that every time they shut me out of a meeting, every time they whispered behind my back, every time they laughed at me across a picnic table, I was documenting. I wasn't just their bookkeeper. I was the only person in that family who knew where every single dollar actually went. Over the past several months, I had built a comprehensive file, a forensic-level record of every financial irregularity in the Harmon catering business. The file contained the original unaltered bank statements showing Regina's $14,000 transfer to her personal account. It contained email threads between Dale and Regina discussing how to keep me out of the loop. It contained screenshots of text messages where Noelle joked about me being their free accountant. And it contained a full accounting of 7 years of unpaid labor I had provided, valued at over $120,000 at market rate. But that wasn't all I found. There were 2 more irregularities buried in the records. Unreported cash income the family had never declared, which created a serious tax liability, and an insurance claim Regina had filed for damaged equipment that was never actually damaged. Fraud. Plain and simple. All of it was organized in that manila envelope, the one now sitting on the Thanksgiving table in front of 50 relatives. Dale wanted to call me a thief in front of the whole family. Fine. But when I opened that envelope, the whole family was going to learn who the real thieves were. I didn't build this case alone. 5 years ago, I met a woman named Constance Park at a professional accounting conference. She was a veteran CPA and forensic accountant with 30 years of experience. She became my mentor. She taught me how to read between the lines of a balance sheet, how to spot patterns that most people overlook, and how to trust my instincts when numbers didn't add up. When I first brought the Harmon files to Constance, she spent 2 full weekends reviewing every document. She cross-referenced every transaction, verified every transfer, and organized the evidence in a format that would hold up in any legal proceeding. When she finished, she looked at me across her desk and said, "You're not crazy, and you're not paranoid. These numbers tell a very clear story, and it's not the story they want told." Constance also connected me with a family law attorney named Diane Reeves. Diane advised me to protect myself legally before any confrontation, especially regarding the marriage. So I quietly retained her, filed the initial paperwork, set everything in place. Dale had no idea. Not about Constance, not about Diane, not about the file. Back at the Thanksgiving table, after Dale made his accusation, the family rallied around him exactly the way I knew they would. His Uncle Gerald spoke up from the far end of the table. "Dale, you're doing the right thing. Family money is sacred." Regina sat with her arms crossed, chin lifted, looking satisfied, like the matter was already settled. Noelle was texting under the table, spreading the story to family members who weren't even there. I could see her fingers moving fast, typing out her version of events before the truth had a chance to breathe. Dale pushed harder. He was emboldened now. "Just admit it, Bridget. Make this easy on yourself. You owe this family an apology and every cent back." He was smiling, that slight, confident smile of a man who believes he has already won. I looked at that smile for a long time. Then I stood up slowly. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I looked at Dale, then at Regina, then at the 50 relatives watching me from every corner of that farmhouse. "You want me to open this envelope, Dale? Because once I do, there's no taking it back. For any of you." He scoffed. "Go ahead. What are you going to do?" I opened the manila envelope calmly and pulled out a thick stack of organized documents. The sound of paper on that table cut through the room like a blade. I held up the first page, the original unaltered bank statement. This is the real bank statement, not the one Dale printed out, not the one someone edited to remove a very specific transaction. The $14,000 went straight to your mother's personal checking account on September 3rd, Dale. She used it to pay for renovations on her rental property on Birch Street. I placed the contractor's invoice right next to the bank statement. Here's the invoice from the contractor. It matches the amount exactly, $14,216. The room erupted in murmurs. Heads turned toward Regina, her face drained of color. She gripped the edge of the table and started talking. Fast. That was a loan to the business. I was going to pay it back. I was going to. I didn't let her finish. A loan? There's no loan agreement, Regina. No board approval. No record of any repayment plan. There's no paper trail because it wasn't a loan. It was money you took from a company that belongs to this entire family. That's embezzlement. I pulled out the next set of pages, printed emails. I read one out loud, my voice clear and steady so every person in that room could hear it. Don't tell Bridget about the Birch Street money. She'll make a big deal out of it. Just move it and we'll figure it out later. I looked at Dale. That's your email, October 12th. Sent to your mother at 9:47 in the morning. Dale's face went white. His jaw tightened. You went through my emails? You gave me access to the business accounts, Dale. All of them. Remember? Because I was your free bookkeeper. You didn't think I'd actually read what was in them? I placed the emails on the table and pulled out the final section of the file. There's more. Unreported cash income the family never declared to the IRS, and an insurance claim filed by Regina for equipment that was supposedly damaged in a storm last March. Except that equipment was never damaged. I have the photos. I have the dates. These aren't bookkeeping errors. These are tax fraud and insurance fraud, and they carry real legal consequences. I paused and looked at every face in that room. I never stole a dime from this family. Not 1 cent. What I did was give 7 years of free labor, over $120,000 worth of professional bookkeeping work. And the thank you I got was being called a thief at Thanksgiving dinner in front of 50 people. I turned to Dale. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I've already retained an attorney. You'll be hearing from her about the divorce. And Constance Park, a certified forensic accountant, has a complete copy of this entire file. So does my lawyer. I placed the full stack of documents on the table. Then I picked up my coat and my bag. I looked at Regina one last time. Happy Thanksgiving, Regina. You might want to call your accountant. I walked out the front door. Behind me, I could hear the chaos exploding, shouting, accusations, chairs scraping against the floor, but none of it was directed at me anymore. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift and devastating for the Harmon family. Dale's relatives, now armed with the truth, demanded a full audit of the catering company. Regina was forced to repay the $14,000 and step down from any involvement in the business finances. The unreported income and the fraudulent insurance claim triggered an internal family crisis that tore through every branch of that family tree. Several relatives quietly hired their own attorneys. Dale tried to call me, many times. Some calls were apologies, others were threats. I never answered a single one. My lawyer, Diane, handled all communication. The divorce proceedings moved forward steadily, and my documentation of unpaid labor and Dale's financial misconduct gave me significant leverage at every stage. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I took on new bookkeeping clients. I moved into my own apartment. A small place with big windows and quiet mornings. For the first time in 7 years, I could breathe without asking permission. Constance called me a few weeks after Thanksgiving. She said something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. You didn't just protect yourself, Bridget. You showed every person in that room what integrity actually looks like. They called me a thief because they thought I was too quiet to fight back. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is just patience, waiting for the right moment to let the truth speak for itself. If someone ever publicly accused you of something you didn't do, if they tried to make you the villain to cover their own mess, I want to hear about it. You deserve to tell your side. Subscribe to this channel and share your story in the comments below. This is a community for people who refuse to stay silent.